Right, come up to me now. My name's George Hatfield. I'm going to show you how to make a handle, bit of ferrule, rod scraper, put that in there, and that will be our finished product. So here we go. We'll make the ferrule first. This is a bit of copper, about 3/4 inch long, just been sawn off with a saw. So what I'm going to do is clean both ends and put an inside bevel on one of the ends. First I'll take the prong centre out and put it in the chuck, in the headstock. Now I can grip that ferrule and hold it about, leaving it's 3/4 inch long, and I'll grip it about halfway. I don't want to grip it too close because then I'll might hit my fingers. So I'll hold that in there now, gripping it in halfway. Bring file and clean it up with a file while it's revolving. Keep your hands well away from the chuck and keep grasping, filing until you get all those corners nice and even. So it looking good now. We'll just have a look at it. See what it's like there now. All the corners have been filed. So now I've just got to clean up the inside and outside edge, and I'll do that with another tool. I can use the corner of the detail chisel in there just to remove the burr, not the cutting edge, the bottom corner there. That's gone. The outside, which is clean with the top corner. That's just to remove the burr. And carefully, hold a bit of sandpaper. I'll give it a quick touch. Whoa! Keep your fingers away from it. Okay. Now, that's got a nice clean finish for us, nice and smooth, so we can reverse it around the other way now. Once again, stop. On the inside, I'm going to use the bottom corner of my skew, which is sharp, and use that in there to cut away a bit of material so we'll have a bevel on the inside. Just take light cuts. This is a dragging action. I'll have to do more of a cut. Stop it. So the handle's turned nice and smooth now. We're going to fit the ferrule on. We made that little inside bevel so it will bite in under the timber. So what I'll do first is clean this edge up with the chisel, the long point of the detail chisel. And I'm going to mark, that's nice and clean now, I'm going to mark the length of the pin I'm going to turn, and I'll make it, say that's the length there, whoops, just a bit smaller, probably about a 32nd of an inch smaller than that, maybe a 16th smaller at this stage. So that distance there is a bit smaller than that, so that chamfer can be, that little bevel can be forced into the timber. There's our cut. I've preset the calipers so they're the same size as the inside diameter, and I'll cut down on a bit of a taper. Better to be safe than sorry. So I've cut down on a bit of a taper, slight taper on that, and that's a good fit there. So I'll wind that out and just check it's a good fit. That was lucky. So the end of it's the right size. I'll bring it down now to parallel pin. Just check the diameter again. Might take a whisker more off. Slowly, slowly catch the monkey. That's it right now. Now, what we'll do now is to, you can see that that pin is shorter than the actual ferrule, length of the ferrule. I'll just clean the face up very carefully. Just come alright. I won't cut right to the pin, otherwise I'll weaken it. But now I use the long point of the skew chisel to undercut that. Oops. Undercut that pin. Shit, that's it. Stop it. Stop it. Go. Right, we've got the ferrule now. I'm going to fit it onto a bit of oak, I think it is. And you'll see there's a lot of holes in it, borer holes. That's good for handle grip, so that's not a bother. But it is a nice firm bit of timber. So I've selected that because it's firm and it won't break. I want to find the exact centre. This is a bit of 1.5 by 1.5. I'm going to mark the exact centre first. I'll use a marking gauge and mark it off the 4 sides. And now I'm going to spec the end of it in the middle of that little square I have in the centre. So I have the exact hole in the middle there. The other end I'll do the same. Mark the centre spot. So now we have the exact centre of a bit of 1.5 inches, about just over 12 inches long, depending on how long you want to make the tool yourself. Excuse me. This is just over 12 inches long. So what we'll do is, taking the chuck, what we're going to do now is to, I've taken the other chuck off, put the Morse taper in there, and it has a bit whisker smaller than the 1/2 inch, 30, well anyway, just a whisker smaller, whatever you have there. You don't want it the same size as 1/2 inch. It's going to be a whisker smaller so that when we push this through in the hole, it's going to tighten up like a Morse taper. So I've lined that up there. Because we're going to bore this bit of timber, this could be a problem. Should always take that out. Otherwise you're going to, you'll learn pretty quickly anyway, I suppose, if you hit yourself in the arm. Move that back, give us a bit of room. And I'm going to bore that handle up the middle. So what I've got to do is set the tool rest up so that it's parallel with the lathe and in line with the centre of the bit. Lock it in place. Now I adjust the tool rest up so that the point of the rest is that little speck point. A whisker higher. You can see that now. The point is on the specked hole, so it's in the centre. Got to pull that back a bit away from the chuck. That's better now. It's lined up. That's in line with the headstock spindle. Now I've got to hold it here. What I'm going to do, this is why I took that centre out. I don't want to punch with my arm. I'm going to line it up with that point, turn the lathe on, and by eye line the timber up with the axis of the lathe, the shaft of the lathe. And then I'll push it in about 1.5 inches. I'll have clearance cuts, see what happens. Line it up there first. Now I start to push it in. Clearance cut. That'll do. So what I have now is a hole that will take that shank, and it won't go all the way, so I've just got to press a little bit more and it'll be a nice firm fit, and it should be straight to the tool. Cut. Now you can see I've taken the chuck out. I've put the spur centre back in again, drive centre in again. On that point I'll line it up with the centre we pre-marked there, and now this point goes into the tailstock and that just lines in there and holds it in place. Bit of pressure on the hand wheel so that the prong centre bites in and lock the locking device. Couple of spins, set the tool rest, and a couple of spins to make sure it's got clearance. Now we're ready to go ahead and turn the handle. What I've done there, I've used the roughing gouge to take the corners off, not to the full diameter, left little flats. You might have seen me putting my hand on it. I can feel that flat when it's revolving, so I've roughed it off, and I've used a smoothing tool to bring it down to about 1 3/8. That's about the size we want. So we started with 1 1/2. We're going to finish with approximately 1 3/8. I'll smooth the rest of the tool up now. Right, we've got a nice fit now. So what I'm going to do is to cut down here with a chisel, and now I'm going to undercut it with the long point of the skew. So you'll see that's a little bit of a lead in, so it will accept the ferrule. So we're going to put the ferrule on now. And that sharp edge goes into that lead in there, and we can use a hammer to just and then we've got a nice fitting ferrule. It's undercut and it's gripping the pin and stopping it from splitting out nice and neatly. So now we'll do the finish of the turning. Put it on there, and we can go ahead and turn the rest of the handle. I like to leave this part here full. As you can see on this tool, this part's full to the ferrule. The reason for that is this is where all the stress is taken, so rather than cut that down fine to the ferrule, I leave it full. It's got more strength. Where I hold the tool, I hold it here. So I'm going to fit that part of the tool to my hand, and I'll show you how I do that, and then I'll finish the rest off. So I'll rough it out first. This is 1 3/8. That's what we need. Now for my hand, tip me, I like to have a grip that is somewhere where those fingers come together like that. So I'm going to turn that down to a diameter where those fingers come close to my thumb there. That gives me the idea of the diameter. Different size hands, different size diameters. But it's not that important, but just make it comfortable, bring them into that size there. So we'll smooth that off now. Cutting with the grain, cutting that way with the grain. That's a nice grip. So now I'll round this part over. And around this part over too, I'll give myself a little bit of clearance to part it off. Oh bugger. Well, got a bit of a problem here, got a bit of a chip. It won't matter, that'll be for identification. I'll keep going. That's down to about ½ inch to give us a bit of clearance. And we'll round that off there. So, with the long point of the skew chisel, with a bit more clearance, and cut down to about ½ inch. Don't want to go too far because it'll break off. So now I'm down to about ½ inch there. Got a flat spot. Old story is, if you can't hide it, feature it. So we'll call it a bit of a better gripping angle. Give it a bit of a smooth up. That'll do it. And then we'll give it a sandpaper. Might sand this first, bit of the sand. In actual fact, I like to have all my handles at this end a bit different. So when I'm looking for my tool on the bench, on the lathe, I can see the handles, not the tool, I see the handles. I pick that tool up and I can identify it by the end of the handle. So this is a feature we're going to use. Turn him on, sandpaper. I also use the sandpaper to clean that copper up. Make it look pretty. Finish the sandering. You'll notice when I'm sanding that I'm holding it, I'm using the thickness as a pressure pad against the wood. Here I just hold the paper stiff. That should be pretty good now. Right, so the sand, that's enough sandering I think. And what we'll do now is put some lacquer on it or some kind of sealer on it. That's quite nice. I got a little identification mark there and I got these holes which will give it a better grip. It's a nice handle. But I'll put some sealer on it now. And this is a shellac mix. Doesn't really matter what it is, shellac, filler, anything. Just to seal the grain. It's best to seal the grain. And I'll put it over everything. On the copper, the whole lot. Slopping it on. Make sure it gets down into this little crevice in here. There's plenty of it on there. Right. Now I'll give it a burnish. Turn it on again and burnish it. Burnish it with the wet rag first, with the shellac on it. And now I'll do it with the dry rag. And that'll be the finish. Use my hand as the burnisher also. And to finish it off, I'm going to cut it down fine at the end here. So I use the long point of the skew chisel and I cut it down to about 1/8 of an inch. Don't cut it all the way through. That's about right now. Just a more. Yeah, we're down to about 1/8 of an inch now. Turn the lathe off and carefully unscrew the hand wheel and pull it away from the prong centre. What I want to stop doing is making a hole in there. So the way to stop doing that is that I hold it on the bench, hit it with a chisel, and that actually breaks the grain off just above the timber rather than have a hole there. So now I use the skew chisel to clean that off. A little bit of sandpaper. A little bit more finish. There we go. Bob's your uncle. Now, to finish the handle off, we use a rod scraper, put that in the hole, and just tap it down on the handle in the lathe, and that's in there nice and tight. Beautiful fit. Because we bought it straight, it's nice and straight. That's the finished handle. The next one I'm going to do is telling you how to sharpen it so we can put a cutting edge on the rod scraper. Okay, we've made the handle now, we've fitted it to it. Now we're going to sharpen it. This is the way you'll buy it. This is already done. So all you've got to do is hold it on the wheel. This is about 60 degree here. Not that important, but it's about 60 degree. That's the way you'll buy it. Now we hold that on the wheel. Start with the bottom edge. And as we start to grind, when you see sparks coming over the top, you'll know you're at the cutting edge. So we hold it on the bevel and lift it up till we are. What we're going to do is hold it on that bevel there. And as we lift it up, we're going to twist it. So it's going to go like that, up the wheel. Now here we go. Cutting on the back, bring it forward, put it in the front. There's the sparks coming over now. We're at the cutting edge. So we come down to there, and now we go cutting edge, hold on the bevel and go up the wheel. And what's happening, you'll see how it's grinding up there. It hasn't ground. If you come in very close, you'll see there's a little bit of a silver line there, which means we haven't reached the cutting edge yet. So we'll start again, on there, up the wheel, and twist it. Cutting edge is gone now, and we've got a little burr there. A bit more. Hold it. Now that's sharp, and it's not very hot, so you don't press hard. Looking at the back of it here, the grinding, and at the front, that's the shape you want. If you grind too far, you'll lose the shape. So it's a little bit of a grind and look at it. A little bit of a grind and look at it. Don't grind too much and it's all gone. But now you can run your finger across the top and feel the burr, and Bob's your uncle. Done. So what I'm doing, I'm holding the tool there on the point, bringing it around, see the spiral shaping coming as I roll it, and roll the tool over, and whatever shape I want in there I can use any point of that tool. And the beauty of it is that as no matter where I use it, it's always being supported under the cut. That's the finish. The finish there. So as I come around, I go in with the point on this side, start the cut. As I bring it around, I'm holding it on its edge, rolling it around. So at this stage it's doing a slicing cut, and I pull that out to the edge. I'll do it again while it's revolving. And to do a finishing cut, very lightly. A little bit of a mark in the middle. I'll pull it out. And that's done. When the burr goes, depending on the steel where the burr goes, go back and grind it again. If it's very hard timber, you might have to grind it again just to finish it off. It's the last cut. But that's the action. There, bring it round and pull it out. Okay, now I'm going to show you some more on a harder timber using the same tool again. So we'll just stop there for a moment. I'll change the setup. Okay, so now we have turned the end grain, hollowed out the end grain. Now I'm going to show you the rod scraper using it on the faceplate grain, with the grain running that way. Not running this way, but running across the grain on faceplate. So here we've got a piece here that I've mounted on the board, and you'll notice that across the long grain on there it's nice and smooth, but on end grain on faceplate it always tears out and leaves holes which are damn hard to sand out because they go deep into the timber. So we want to eliminate those holes if we can. And that's caused by a not a smooth cut. So we'll do first, I'll make a cut with the scraper. I'll hold it like that. If you hold it like that, it's going to grab on you. So I'll hold it like that. I'll do it. And you see the shadings that are coming off. The scraper's nice and sharp. And I'll show you the finish. Good finish. End grain, you can still see bits of the end grain. So the more I can eliminate that end grain, the better. So what I'm going to do now is to use the rod scraper to do a slicing cut. We pick the shaving up, rubbing the bevel and bringing it around there at an angle, giving you a slicing cut, and that will give you a better finish and a dead scrape. So we hold it here. You can go back over it, touch any marks you want to make on there. And that'll give you the best finish you can get on end grain timber. There's no pitting at all on there. It's ready to sandpaper. Stop. Okay, now we've made a convex cut, nice and smooth, with no end grain pitting. You can use the same tool for doing a cross on a convex cut too. So if you want to do a compound cut, you can use that internally and externally. We'll just try that now and see how it goes. See the shadings that come off? The shadings tell the story. Now what I would do here for this compound shape, I bring it round to there, and then I do a Other burr still there, so I can do it again. A very fine shading, convex. And bringing it around to a concave, bring it round to a convex shape. And we look at that now, we'll see that coming closer here, and look, that was the end grain here. As we've turned it with the rod scraper, there's no pitting at all. Ready for sandpaper. Cut. Okay, now we go on to, we've done the outside of the faceplate work. Now we're going to do some internal stuff, as though we're turning a bowl. And whatever way you want to turn it out, in there first to get rid of the inside, you can use a gouge. Now to finish it off, to get the nice shape, you can use the scraper. This is what most people probably do. I use the scraper to scrape. If you have a bowl gouge, you can use a bowl gouge too. I just want to demonstrate how the rod scraper cuts across the end grain on internal work like a bowl. So that's the internal shape now, and I can, using a scraper, I've done it. And you can see the finish on that. And there is a little bit of pulled grain on the end grain. That's what you would expect with a scraper. Using a scraper, trying to put it on its edge and do a skew scrape, it keeps pulling back. So we use the rod scraper and we can come around that shape, and it's supported the whole way around. There's no way it can jump back. It's a much safer tool, giving you a skew cut. So from here we go. See the shadings coming off? Spiral shading tells the story. Start with a dead scrape, bring it round, twist it over, and then you're cutting here. The face of that tool is on an angle, and give you a nice new scrape. Now look at the end grain now. There's the end grain there. There. That's as clean as you're going to get with a scraper. If you've got little lumps and bumps there, you can go over it very, very lightly. Follow the same action, start in the centre, bring it out, hold it up at an angle. Very light cuts, giving you a skew scrape. Go back and touch it anywhere you like. There's no way you can make a catch when you've got it on an angle. Not as though you've got a tool like that and it's going like that. This one, there's no jump back. It's giving it its slicing action and get the finish you wish. Very light touch, light shading, and that's the finish. Looking at the end grain, beautiful.
By the way, that is very instructive, because you saw he made a little cut, took it straight and flipped it 90.
Okay, I've showed you how the rod scraper does internal work on chuck work, it does faceplate work. This is a little thing it does on between centre work. So when I'm cutting between centre work, and I'm cutting this with a very sharp skew chisel, I'm cutting that way, per chip. The reason it's doing that is that the grain is running, it's chipping, chipping, chipping. Doesn't matter which way I go. The reason it's chipping is because you're cutting against the grain. We'll see it here, but the grain is running at that angle. So when I'm cutting that way, I'm cutting against the grain there. When I'm cutting back this way, I'm cutting against the grain there. And there's no way you can use a skew chisel to get that smooth. The only way you can turn it reasonably smooth and then sandpaper it is to use a scraper. And that's what we normally do. So with the grain running at an angle, rather than running true to the axis, I'm going to use a scraper and show you how. Because this isn't wedging the cut, it's not splitting it, it's just scraping it. So when I find a rough bit of wood, it's got grain running every which way, I'll use a scraper to finish it off. And I get a finish there that's not as good as a skew chisel, but at least it's smooth with no chipping, and I can sandpaper it. And you see the grain there. The chipping's been cut back, and it's straight, and I can sandpaper that smooth. That was using the scraper and a flat scrape. If I try to use it like that on a skew scrape, it's going to go that way or that way. So using the rod scraper, I can use it to cut here with the scraping at a skew and come along and get a good finish all the way through. That's doing a skew scrape, and we'll have a look at the two finishes. This was with a flat scrape, that is with a skew scrape, no chipping, and a reasonable finish, a much better finish than using it with a flat scrape. So once again, the skew scrape beats the flat scrape. And that's what this tool does. Safely and easily to use. Easy to sharpen, easy to use. It's not going to grab on you. End of story. What tells the story of all our wood turning is this here. The shavings. The shavings I've been making are all curly shavings, as you'll see them there. And I'll do it one more time with the rod scraper. Finish it off, and there's our shavings, very fine spiral shavings, and that tells the story why we get a good finish. Take the lumps and bumps out whenever you like. So for a bit of wood that couldn't be used with a skew, cleaned with a skew, now we've got a good finish with a rod scraper. End of story.